What up, I be in the building, and we back for another video. Now I'm back with another team breakdown, but I'm gonna start pumping these out, basically every day. I'm gonna try to start uploading twice a day, a rebuild and a team breakdown, and I'm gonna do these just with some 2K gameplay in the background, because making a whole presentation of it kind of takes 2 days to do, and you know, if I'm trying to upload 2 videos a day, I think y'all catch my drift. So this one's about the Trailblazers, Portland Trailblazers. They're an interesting team basically every year. They were, let's just start with their team state. They were 29-37 at the point of suspension, and that put them at tied for 9th in the West. I think in the Pelicans video I said that the Pelicans were 10th in the West. In reality, they were tied for 9th with Portland for that 9th spot. And that kind of 7 to 10 range in seeding for any conference is kind of what you want to drift away towards in terms of being in NBA purgatory. Being in NBA purgatory is you're a team that competes but will never, based on how you're currently constructed, they're capped out in terms of what they can do in the playoffs. They're capped out at maybe getting to the 2nd round and getting bounced in 4 or something like that if they do make the playoffs. Typical teams like that would be like the Detroit Pistons of the past 3 years. They were in NBA purgatory. When they weren't making the playoffs, they were in the 9th to 10 to 11 seed range, so they weren't really bottoming out for a good pick. And when they were making the playoffs, they were making an 8th seed and they would get bounced by LeBron in 4 games. That's kind of what you want to avoid, and it seems like that's the direction that Portland is heading down. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's just start with the players, talking about the core players for Portland. Obviously, there's Damian Lillard. Everybody knows about Damian Lillard. Dame Dollar, Logo Lillard. I don't think I have to, or actually, let me just go through his strengths and weaknesses, even though it's pretty well known. Fantastic scorer, fantastic shot creator, fantastic shooter. Like I said, fantastic scorer. One of the best scorers in the entire league. He's also a solid playmaker. He's known as a score-first point guard, but he is still a solid playmaker. Limitless range. Yeah, everybody knows about Damian Lillard. In terms of his defense, that's kind of where it's a bit of a question mark. It's kind of hard for me to differentiate player defense on this team compared to team defense. Is there one defensive liability, or is it just the entire team's defense as a whole that is holding back this team? We'll get to this team's defense in a bit. Let's move on to CJ McCollum. CJ McCollum, in my opinion, he's reached his ceiling. He's capped out as a player. He's a 20-a-game scorer, great shooter, good shot creator. Doesn't have the best efficiency. He shoots 38% from 3 on a lot of attempts, which is good. But his field goal percentage is roughly around 44%, which is not great, but it's not bad either. It's good for a shot creator. Decent playmaking. He's kind of been criticized for his lack of playmaking in prior years, but his playmaking did step up this year, especially when Damian Lillard got injured this year. His assist numbers were up to 4 assists a game. But again, coming back to the defense, he is a defensive liability. Having 2 6'3" and under guards in your backcourt kind of bodes poorly. It raises question marks for concerns on the defensive end. We've seen the Boston Celtics in around 2016-2017 make it work with Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley, 2 guards that were below the height of 6'3", with Isaiah Thomas being 5'9". But you got to think, Avery Bradley at that time was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and Boston had a bunch of players that were just known for their defensive prowess. Like I said, Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder was on that team. Jay Crowder in his prime. Al Horford, Marcus Smart was emerging. It was a young Jaylen Brown, etc. So having 2 small guards in the backcourt didn't hurt them as much as it hurts this Portland Trailblazers team. And yeah, like I said, CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, they kind of get exploited on the defensive end, night in and night out. Let's move on to another one of probably their third and final player that I would consider a definitive core player for this team, Jusuf Nurkic. He's a great big, he's a great rebounder, solid defender. He's not going to be swatting shots all over the place, but he's a solid defender, always in the right spot in terms of switches, guarding the roll man. He's a big body, he's hard to move. He's kind of in that Steven Adams type of defense where his shot blocking numbers don't suggest that he's a elite rim protector, but big man defense is more than just blocking shots, and we'll get to that sentiment when I talk about Hassan Whiteside. He can score on the low block from time to time. He's not going to be a consistent guy you just give the ball to on the low block. When he has a switch, he can convert. He's a good passer. There's been numerous times on this Trailblazers team where he's had upwards of 8 assists in a game, so he's a really good passer for a big. Believe it or not, from 16 feet to out to the 3-point line, which is your typical long 2 range, the shot that the NBA is gravitating away from, he shoots 43% from there, so which is pretty good. It's a pretty good percentage from there, and that's kind of the extent of his floor spacing. He doesn't shoot threes, but I assume with Zach Collins extending his range Zach Collins' sample size was small. He only played 3 games and then got injured, but in those 3 games he was lighting it up from downtown, when the year prior he didn't shoot threes at all. But he extended his range to the 3-point line. I assume that Portland is going to try to make that a point of emphasis for Nurkic. Given that he's able to hit long 2s at 43% clip, I assume that him gravitating towards the 3-point line won't be impossible for him, and I think this coming year, Portland will try to make that a point of emphasis for the big man. And he's on a great contract. I just know this because I play 2K, and it's always good to have Nurkic on my team because he's a high overall center on a really good contract. I think that contract was signed 2 years ago. Let me just pull up his contract really quickly. Yeah, he's making $12 million a year over these, and he's gonna have 2 more years on that deal, making $12 million per year. That's a really big plus, especially for a team that's already, sorry, my MacBook's going crazy, but that's a big plus for a team that's already kind of capped out in terms of salary cap. They're already spending big on Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, so having that a really great player on a deal of $12 million a year is a big positive for them. Now that we've talked about their core players, let's get to some players that I label as just players, basically role players. Let's start with I want to start with Melo. Melo was good. Offensively he was good. He spaced the floor out, showed shot creation at times. Like I said, he spaced the floor out. I think he shot 38% from 3, which is above league average, and it's really good for Melo. And it's really good to have a 38% shooter at your power forward position, because like I said, that's where the league is going, and you need maximum spacing for Damian Lillard. Yeah, he shot 37% from 3, 42.6% from the field, and he put up 15 a game. So offensively, I would say he was a plus. He shot relatively efficiently, but then we go to the other side of the ball where it kind of gets a bit bad for Melo. He was a defensive liability a year ago. He was a defensive liability 2 years ago. He was an average defender throughout his entire prime. Now with him being 34, 35 years old, he is going to be even more of a liability. And he was starting at the power forward position for this team, and he was starting out of necessity. It's not like Terry Stotts had many choices of players to start at that power forward position. With Zach Collins being injured 3 games into the year, Nazir Little, he played small ball 4 at UNC, and he's not ready for that in the NBA level, so that's why they signed Melo. They needed somebody to play that 4 position, and he came in and provided scoring, but he's not gonna come in and provide defense. He can try his best in terms of team defense, but opposing offenses will always try to go at Carmelo Anthony, and then having Carmelo Anthony, Damian Lillard, and CJ McCollum all on the same team in the same lineup at the same time, that kind of amplifies each other. So in terms of Melo, I think he could be a really good bench player. Defending players off the bench, he won't be as much of a liability, especially playing at the 4 position. I think that is where his career should kind of continue, the role he should accept at this stage of his career, coming off the bench, maybe getting 16, 17, 18 minutes a night, and if he's balling out, he could be a 6th man. But I think that's the role he should accept for the remainder of his career, and if he's willing to accept like a minimum to a $3 million per year contract with Portland, I think Portland should try to bring him back on that type of role and on that type of contract. Next, we'll talk about Gary Trent Jr. Now, in a season filled with negatives, Gary Trent Jr. was a pleasant surprise. He was one of the best shooters for this team this year. Dropping 8 points per game off the bench, he shot 38.8% from 3, and 57% of his entire field goal percentage, 57% of his entire field goal attempts came from the 3-point line, which is kind of crazy. He was just coming in and just letting that thing fly. He took 3.8 3-pointers per night in 20 minutes of action. Like I said, he was a pleasant surprise for this team. This was his 2nd year in the league. He didn't play much last year, only played 15 games. And his 3-point shot wasn't there at all, but this year he shot 38.8% on a relatively high efficiency. Hopefully going forward, Gary Trent Jr. can be another bench bucket for this team, because we'll get into the bench scoring for this team as a whole, but Gary Trent Jr. was a bright spot for this team in a season filled with negatives. And he's still young. He's only 21, I believe. Right, he's only 21. And he can still develop into something. I think he can really be a good bench scorer for this team, like I said. Next, we'll talk about Anthony Simons. Now, this is one that really pisses me off, because I remember preseason, there was so many Portland Trailblazers fans in my timeline, just blowing up my timeline, talking about, oh, we got the next big thing. Y'all been sleeping on Anthony Simons. And I was like, who the hell is this? Because I didn't hear about him at all the year prior. And now I'm just hearing about this dude on Portland blowing up my timeline that didn't play at all last year, and everybody's hyping him up. So I looked into him, and he was a guy that went to the IMG Academy, and I was like, okay, maybe he's going to do something this year. And his actual play was alright. I mean, he came in, got 9 points a game on 40% from the field, 33.8% from 3. He was confident enough to take 3.4 3-point attempts a game. But, I mean, this dude is basically another player in the Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum mold. They're basically triplets. Light skins, score first, defensively challenged, all below the height of 6'3", which is pretty funny. But, like I said, he's another young player that this Portland Trailblazers team has, and it's kind of a team that's been in desperate need of young talent. They've just had a bunch of 28 and up players over their past 3 years, and all of their younger players have kind of just been guys that were just the 13th, 14th, 15th guy on the roster. People like Caleb Swanigan and players of the such. But now they actually have some young talent in Anthony Simons. In my opinion, in the few games that I've seen, he has some offensive potential. Confident shooter, like I said. He's pretty bouncy in terms of finishing at the rim. He has some bounce. Also, he's a great shooter from the long range, 2 range. 13% of his field goal attempts came from there, and he shot 45.6% from that range, which kind of suggests signs as a shot creator. Hopefully this dude can develop into maybe a long-term 6th man for this team. I think they have 2 guys right now in Gary Trent Jr. and Anthony Simons that can come in as the bench backcourt and provide a lot of scoring pop for this Trailblazers team going forward. Let's talk about another young player for this Trailblazers team, Nazir Little. I don't know much about him because this year he didn't really play that much. I think he played like 11 minutes a night. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, 11.9 minutes a night. I mean, he scored 3.6 points a game. He didn't shoot horribly from the field. Then we get to his 3-point shot, and he shot 23.7% from the 3. And I think that was kind of the biggest question mark with him coming out of UNC. I remember when I watched college basketball last year that he struggled a lot at North Carolina, which saw his draft stock fall drastically. He was the number 3 recruit coming out of high school, and in the NBA draft he ended up falling to the 20s, where Portland got him. He came in the league as an athlete with defensive potential. Basically, a lot when I was reading up on his player profile, they viewed him as a boom or bust type of prospect. Either he's going to be really good, and if he wasn't really good, he was going to be out of the league in a couple of years. So hopefully he can use that athleticism. He's a big body. He's 6'6", like 230. And he's a great rebounder. I saw that in college. And yeah, hopefully he can develop into just a 3-and-D player for this team. Going forward with a lot of these young players that don't really have the shot creation potential, they're just going to have to be 3-and-D players. That's how these young players are going to have to survive in this league. And hopefully Nazir Little can do that. Finally, let's talk about the final young promising player for this team. And I think is the most crucial young player to this team moving forward. It's Zach Collins. Now, Zach Collins, I saw him play these past 2 years, and he's an athletic big. He moves really well. He's 6'11", going on 7 foot, and he moves really well. He's kind of quick for his size, and he has quite a bit of bounce in terms of, I've seen him get a lot of chase down blocks, weak side blocks, some dunks in traffic. He's a pretty athletic big, and he has some rim protecting potential as well. Also, what really, I alluded to this earlier, but what really spoke out to me about his potential for this team is his spacing of the floor, the potential to space the floor. Like I said, in his first 3 games, he was shooting 43% from 3 on 2.3 attempts per game. That is going to be vital if he can provide that floor spacing and another good defender, another plus defender for this Portland Trailblazers team. This is all the Trailblazers team needs. More shooters around Dame and CJ and Nurkic, and more defense, particularly around Dame and CJ. And I think Zach Collins is a player that can provide both of those things. At the 4 position, playing next to Nurkic, and then he can slide to the center in some nights when Nurkic goes to the bench and Trailblazers can play a bit small with Collins at the center. And I think he can hold his own at that position. And like I said, another player who is still young. I think he's 22 or 23. I think he stayed in college a bit. And he's been in the league for 3 years, I believe. So I think after next year, he'd be up for a restricted contract extension for the Blazers. So we'll see how much he would get from them. But yeah, I think Zach Collins is a player that has a lot of untapped potential, and a player that can really thrive and benefit this Portland Trailblazers team going forward. Now let's talk about the team in general. Some of their team stats: they were the 4th worst team in defensive rating. The only 4 teams, or the only 3 teams that were worse or had a worse defensive rating than them, were the Cavs, the Hawks, and the Wizards. That's not company that you want to be in terms of in terms of anything statistically based. You don't want to be in the realm of the Cavs, Hawks, and Wizards, but especially defense. They, like I was alluding to this entire video, they don't have multiple players that are great on defense. The closest is Hassan Whiteside, who was leading the league in blocks. He was getting like 3 blocks a game. But like I said, defense is more than just getting blocks. In Miami, he was often benched because he was just lackadaisical. He wasn't showing effort. He would show up to get blocks. It seemed like he would be excited to get blocks, but throughout the entire game, he would just have lapses on defense, miss switch assignments, no ability to guard a switch, to rotate. Yeah, defense as a big is more than just blocking shots, and Hassan Whiteside doesn't really provide that. CJ McCollum, defensive liability. Dame, not great on defense. Melo, we already talked about Melo. Ariza is the next closest defender to being great on defense, but it seems like he's lost a step or 2, or maybe even 3. To be honest, he's kind of far from his defense that he provided with the Lakers and with the Rockets in his career. Bazemore is an okay defender, but I think they traded him away. And the combination of Dame and CJ in the backcourt, way too small. Nurkic was a good defender, but he got injured. And I think losing players like Aminu and Harkless, which were on their best days, they were 3-and-D wings when they could hit their shots. But really, they were just defensive wings and small ball defensive fours that could provide the defense around Dame and CJ. And I think everybody really underestimated those losses. I particularly underestimated those losses. And I think it really hurt the team more than we originally assumed. Another stat that I found was that this Portland Trailblazers team has the highest amount of field goals that are unassisted. 51.8% of their field goals made are unassisted, and second is Houston, a team in Houston that encourages isolations for Harden and Russ. They don't even lead the league in unassisted field goals. Houston's at 47.8% of their field goals made unassisted, which is really bad. Their offense isn't coming easily. They're just relying on Dame to bail them out. You saw in that run where he was just dropping 40 a game repeatedly, maybe even, I don't know if it was a 40 points per game streak or a 50 points per game streak, but y'all remember that streak he had. And CJ to bail him out. Now, we have to take into account that the team was injured, suffered many injuries. They lost Rodney Hood and Zach Collins and Jusuf Nurkic, all three players that were vital to this team last year that helped them get 53 wins and gave them a 3 seed, and that were going to be vital for this team this year. They lost all 3 of them, so we kind of have to give them a pass for that. They also have the worst bench in the league. And that's another thing that can be attributed to losing Rodney Hood, who was their consistent bench bucket. And I think that will improve next year, especially with Rodney Hood coming back and Anthony Simons and Gary Trent Jr. developing another year, getting within the offense, and possibly bringing back Carmelo Anthony for a bench role. So yeah, those 2 things are like kind of shocking stats that I found, but I think those are 2 things that will improve for the Trailblazers next season. So, the direction of this team, they're not rebuilding. They can't embrace a rebuild because Dame he's not getting any younger. He's not old by any means, but he is 29. He's in the middle of the prime of his career. You don't have that much time to build around Dame while he's in the prime of his career. Dame already said he wants to retire a Trailblazer. He wants to commit all of his time to trying to get this team a ring. He doesn't want to go chase that anywhere else besides Portland. So you got to repay that. You got to repay that by not just standing back and doing nothing to improve this team and being like, oh, maybe CJ and Dame and Nurkic will get us one. No, you have to go out and retool around Dame. He's your franchise player. You had a franchise player not too long ago in Clyde Drexler in the 90s, and y'all got to the finals with him, but you never got him the ring. You have another one in Damian Lillard. Those don't come too often. You gotta maximize the time you have with Dame. He is a top 10 player in the league, one of the best scorers in the league. You have to retool around Dame, build around Dame, and try to get back to that 53 win season that y'all had a year ago. So, in my opinion, you should give it another year after everybody is healthy, which is going to be this upcoming next year. Everybody's healthy. Maybe go out and sign another 3-and-D small forward to use your mid-level exception on. And if you can't do that, just keep Ariza. So yeah, go out, let the team get back to full health, and see what that team at full health can do. And in that same season, develop your young guys, your Gary Trents, your Anthony Simons, Nazir Littles, Zach Collins. Develop them. And yeah, also bring back Melo if he's willing to come back on a minimum to like $3 million per year contract. I don't think many teams are going to give him more than that. So if he's willing to come back on that and he'll play like 18 minutes a game off the bench, I would say bring him back. Let Whiteside go. They're not going to have his bird rights. Unless he wants like a mid-level exception, which I don't know. I don't really know Hassan Whiteside's value on the open market, but this offseason will show that. Sign a 3-and-D small forward. There's a desperate hole for that on this team. Give Dame and CJ one more chance to lead the team, and for this upcoming year. If it ends in another first round or second round exit, I think the writing is on the wall. You gotta trade CJ. I think you gotta not blow this team up. I think you gotta break up that dynamic duo of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. I think they've reached their peak, that duo, and obviously you're gonna choose Damian Lillard over CJ McCollum. In terms of what you could get back for CJ McCollum, I don't know. But just speculating, I think you could get back a quality 3-and-D forward and a future first round pick. Maybe a couple seconds as well. I think that's his value. I don't think CJ McCollum is a hot commodity around the league. I think you could get a 3-and-D forward for him and a future protected pick. In terms of what team would want CJ McCollum, I'm gonna have to do more thinking about this, but off the top of my head, the first team that came to my head was the Orlando Magic. They're a team that loves to be in that purgatory position of hovering around the 8th seed year in and year out, and they have two players that can play the forward position, in Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon, and obviously the player with a higher ceiling between those two is Jonathan Isaac. So maybe adding Aaron Gordon, he's a really good defender. If he can get back to his 3-point shot that he showed 2 years ago, this year he was pretty bad from 3. But if he can get his 3-point shot back that he showed 2 years ago, then I think that's a player that can really benefit this Portland Trailblazers team. After that, trading CJ McCollum, that would take away $29 million away from this team's cap, or take away $29 million away from this team's payroll. I know I criticize 2K a lot, deservedly, for the bugs that they have in their game, but their user interface for my league and my GM in terms of finding salary cap and whatnot is quite simple. It's easier to find than just looking on the laptop. So I will credit 2K for that. They will get a dub in the very few that they deserve. Oh, maybe I should explain why the Magic would want them. Like I said, they're a team that hovers around that 8 seed bubble, and they really need scoring in their backcourt. Evan Fournier is going to be a free agent this year, and I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not, but CJ McCollum could be a scorer for that team, a team that desperately needs it, especially in the backcourt. They could have a lineup of, I don't know if they're going to start Markelle Fultz or roll with DJ Augustine, but one of those point guards, CJ McCollum, Jonathan Isaac. I don't think they'll play Mo Bamba at the 4. They have Terrence Ross, though. I mean, if they were to bring back Evan Fournier, he could play the small forward position for them. So if they were to make that trade, they could have, let's say they roll with Markelle Fultz, because he's a really good defender at the point guard. Not really good, he's a solid defender at the point guard position. They could have Markelle Fultz, CJ McCollum, Evan Fournier, John Isaac, and Vucevic, and maybe in the future they would have Bamba at the center. That seems like a pretty decent lineup. That's an upgrade on what they have at the moment, and they're a team that's always looking to hover around the 8th seed, and I think adding CJ McCollum for Aaron Gordon would be a way to do that. A player that's kind of been on the trade deadline for this team for the past 2 years. Getting back to the Trailblazers, they're gonna lose Whiteside's contract this next year, or at the end of this year. They still have Nurkic making $14 million. Ariza's contract will still be on the table. Hood has a player option. Zach Collins is last year. Okay, so if they lost CJ McCollum's contract and they brought in Aaron Gordon's contract, I forgot what he's making. I think he's making like $17 million a year. 19.86. So they would shave $10 million on their table. What I'm doing is I'm trying to project onto the 21 Yeah, the 2021, I'm tripping. The 2021 free agency class, which is going to be a lot better than this upcoming class. They would have, then Ariza is going to be gone. If they bring back Nurkic on his deal, 23, and then they extend, let's say they extend Zach Collins for another, I don't know, 8 million per year. They'd have like 15 million available for a max. They wouldn't really have max money, but they would have 15 million in cap space, which could get them a really quality player or a couple. And then who knows, maybe there's a player out there who's on the free agency market, not getting as much money as they thought they were going to get. Portland's there, come play with Dame, try to get him a ring. Nurkic, you know, like, it's kind of hard to tell the future in terms of free agency, who's going to be on the trade market, but what I'm getting at is this team has kind of met its ceiling, and the way to really break that ceiling is to do something kind of drastic. And the thing to do here that's kind of been hovering over this franchise for the past 3 years, whether or not to trade CJ McCollum. And I think as of now, or as of in a year's time, I think the answer will be finally yes. That's going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy, leave a like, and until next time. If you have anything you want to say about the Portland Trailblazers, disagreed with what I said, or agreed with what I said, let me know in the comments section. But like I said, until next time, it's been your boy IB. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.